Welcome back to another R tutorial. Like always, come out every Friday. So if you are new to this series, be sure to go back and watch the old ones and come back every Friday to learn some more R. Last week we looked at the apply function in R, and today we're going to look at some slightly different variations of this function. They do a very similar job, but there's some subtle differences. So the first one we're going to look at is lapply, but before that we have to define some vector. So I'm just going to put in some very arbitrary numbers. Minus 34.5, why not? Right, we don't need this vector to be too big. So there you go. Now I'm going to put lapply, and then brackets. In the first argument of this function, we're going to put in our vector that we've created. So that's x, because I've called the vector x, okay. And in the second argument, we put in a function that we want to apply to each element in x. So I'm going to put in abs, which is the function which takes your input and returns the absolute value. What this is going to return, as you'll see in a minute, is a list. The L in lapply stands for list. Okay, and the names of these functions, apply, lapply, sapply, and and so on, refers to the difference between them is the output that you get more than anything. So there are some differences in the inputs you can put into, but anyway. So we put this in. You can see it takes our first element, it's -2, the absolute value of -2 is 2, absolute value of -4 is 4. For the positive numbers, it's just the number itself. Okay, so that's all well and good, but this is not a very condensed format, it's a list. So now we're going to introduce the function sapply, and we're going to return the absolute value again. As you can see, sapply creates a vector here, alright, which is quite nice. So we get all the same values but in a different formula. So that's the difference between lapply and sapply, is sapply returns a vector, whereas lapply returns a list. Let's have a look at a few more examples. Let's say we do lapply of x and we apply the sine function. Well, it plugs in all these values, all the values of this vector x, and returns the sine of those values, okay, in a list. And we do sapply now, and right, and you get the same values but in this vector format. Okay, so it's pretty simple, the difference between these two functions, so that's not too complicated. What I want to talk about quickly is the functions that I'm putting in. So these are just abs and sine, very common functions, of course. So R already has a built-in function for it. So when I type in ABS, that calculates the absolute value. That's built into the program. Okay, so you don't have to define that function yourself. But what if you've got a vector and you want to perform some function that is not a built-in function in R? Well, you're going to have to create that function yourself. So that's what we're going to look at across the next couple of videos. Okay, which does mean we're going to have to introduce creating our own files and R and stuff like that. And really get. And once we've done those sorts of things, you can actually start making your own scripts and things, and which will be useful for projects. Because what we've done up to this point is really just messing around with some of the basics in R and just seeing what some functions can do and getting used to a little bit of the syntax and all that. But we're going to start getting into some stuff that you can carry forward into real world examples and actually working with data. Okay. If you did enjoy this video, please be sure to like and subscribe. As I say, if you haven't seen the earlier videos in this series, you know, like we do a video on how to create these vectors and a couple of different ways we can create them, how to create matrices. The apply function was last week's video, so I'd encourage you to go check out those, and I hope to see you in the next